So in this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about rational psychology. Now, rational psychology is just rational science, right? It's Bill Gaede's rational science that's applied to a narrow set of topics. So it's physics and philosophy that's applied to the mind, thoughts and feelings. So physics is causes and mechanisms, whereas philosophy is purposes and reasons. So an example of physics would be what caused the Soviet Union to take over the Eastern Bloc, whereas philosophy would be why did Karl Marx write the Communist Manifesto, right? So it's those two things that are applied to, again, these narrow topics. So, for example, in psychology, we would want to answer questions like, why do people get sad? Why are oddly satisfying videos so satisfying? Why is it that we like to dance? Why is it that people with antisocial personality disorders, why is it that they have an inability to empathize, right? Why is it that when they see something sad that they don't have the same response, right? They don't have the same feelings. So those are the kinds of questions that we want to answer in psychology. Now, because psychology is a subset of, or because we are dealing with rational science, we have to visualize a cause or mechanism. Doesn't mean that we have to prove or disprove that thing. It just means that we have to explain what happened in the past. Now, because we can only imagine an object in science, this means that we're going to have to illustrate the cause or mechanism. Now this gets us to an impasse, because there are, in my personal view, there are two views of psychology. There is the empathetic view, which is where we put ourselves in the shoes of another person, in the eye sockets of that person, and we try to imagine what is appearing on the screen, both in the eye sockets and above, I guess, so to speak, in the mind. Sort of in the same way that you think about things and remember things and look out of your head. But trying to do that from the perspective of an ant, or your neighbor down the street, or a giraffe, right? And so there's this difficulty where we are aware that we don't experience things quite the same way that they do. But in this view, we would try to replicate what it is that they are experiencing, I guess. So that's one view. That's one view of psychology. The other view is what I'll call the antisocial view of psychology. Now, in the antisocial view, we are just looking at the matter, right? We're just looking at the atoms in the brain of the dog, right? And sort of the ropes that interconnect the atoms, and how those pulsate and store information, okay? Not that, quote-unquote, information can be stored, because information is a concept. But you know what I mean, like in the same way that circuit boards can, quote-unquote, store patterns, right? And these patterns can be translated into images and so on. So in the antisocial view, we're looking at the brain just sort of like a circuit board, and we don't really put ourselves in the shoes of that person, I guess. We're just looking at how the ropes are moving and how those ropes, how those atoms, nerves, how those trigger certain chemicals. And I think we can both agree that the antisocial view is a perfectly logical way, a perfectly rational way of looking at these topics. And so the empathetic view is sort of like a bonus view, right? Because somebody that has the empathetic view will also have the antisocial view. But somebody that has the antisocial view might not think that it is rational to enter the mind of an ant, for example. And so we come to, again, this impasse where we have to ask ourselves, is it rational to do that? Now, I'm going to argue that the empathetic view is rational, and I'll explain why. The first thing is that it is not sufficient. It is not sufficient to give an abbreviated explanation. Now, what is an abbreviated explanation? Well, an abbreviated explanation is something like, you're asking why somebody is sad, and somebody comes and says, well, it's just chemicals, or it's just these ropes that are moving around. It's not really fine enough. It doesn't really or let me put it another way. When Gaede tells us, he shows us a picture of an atom, for example, he's not showing us a complete image of an atom. He's showing us an abbreviated version because he can't draw every rope in the universe converging in a single point, because that would where do you even begin with that? That's such a very difficult task, right? It's certainly possible, but it is unimaginably difficult. And so what we'll do is we'll just draw a simplified atom to just sort of, get the point across, right? And it's the same thing that we will do when we say that, oh, it's just chemicals, right? But we can get finer with that, and I guess that's what we're trying to do with the empathetic view. Is we're trying to get, we want to see how everything moves around in a very fine way, in a very detailed sort of way. So that's my first argument. And the second argument is that you have these ropes that are pulsating, right? These atoms that are pulsating. Can we translate that into a visual medium, into a medium that we can understand? And I think we can. I think that we can take those engrams and we can convert that into an MP4, and we can take a memory and we could put it on the screen as a video file, and we could watch it. And so because I think we could do that, I don't think Gaede would disagree with that. I guess the question becomes, regarding these two views, should we take those engrams and convert them into a language that we can understand? Now that is what I think is the divide. And if you pose it that way, I think it becomes very clear that we should have an empathetic view of psychology. And so we should try to visualize what is on the screen, whether that is an ant or, an octopus or a space alien, right? Now, we have machine learning algorithms. We have these machine learning things that can look at pictures and identify pictures. And these pictures are just, they're made of pixels, right? And they have resolution. Now, if you consider that light is a wave, or light is a rope, it's a physical object, right? It's torquing. Well, if that's one input, then that means that, if each rope is one input, that means that our vision has resolution. And so it's the same kind of principle. That's how we're able to identify objects, is that each rope gets weighted with certain values, right? Or each torsion, I guess, gets weighted with a certain value. And so we can, it's sort of like the same how a machine learning algorithm does it, like certain colored pixels and certain clusters of pixels add up to become like a ball or, a starfish or whatever, and that becomes like the starfish library, and you have the tree library, and so you're able to identify, a tree because you have enough numbers of that particular set of values. And so I think that's where we get our entryway to understanding a lot of these things from an empathetic point of view, that we can actually just convert the eyesight of the octopus or the ant, and because that has resolution, you could just treat it like it's pixels, right? And so you could just look at it the way that a machine learning algorithm does it, and suddenly we can understand all these things, like oddly satisfying videos, or antisocial behavior, anything involving sexuality or fetishes or anything like that. We can now understand those things because we have the tools to work with. We're not just looking at ropes. We're looking at images on a screen. So those are my thoughts. That is my introduction to psychology, and I'm really curious to know what Gaede thinks. And I guess my question to Gaede is, do you have an empathetic view of psychology, or do you have an antisocial view, just an antisocial view alone? So with that, I'd like to conclude, and thank you guys. Have a nice day.